I am John Hurley, and I'm your Democratic candidate for state representative of Indiana's 75th District. As a representative of portions of Warwick, Spencer, and Pike counties, I will support our schools, protect working families, and defend our constitutional rights. I'm a career and technical educator, a member of Indiana State Teachers Association, a lifetime endowment member of the National Rifle Association, and a member of Indiana Farm Bureau. My wife Jessica and I reside in Spencer County. I wanted to have this forum as an opportunity for everyone to be able to ask questions and then view those answers through this video. Of course, I prefer to do this in person, but given the circumstances, that is impossible at this time. The questions I addressed were submitted by voters throughout District 75. So, first one up here says, what needs to be done to bring our state educational system to the quality system it needs to be? A big component of this, three big components really, is respect for educators as professionals, decreasing our testing, and then adequate funding, particularly for our rural areas. Of course, as we've seen during the COVID-19 response, educators are adapting and then continuing to deliver lessons and materials to the students and the parents at this point in time. Teachers can currently only bargain for wages and wage-related benefits. At one point in time, they could bargain for a lot more within their working conditions. I would definitely support returning to that system where educators are able to bargain for everything around them. Our working conditions that are the students' learning conditions, and that goes a long way. Also, with that area of respect for educators, having that occur, having some increase in compensation, the better working conditions, that's going to recruit more educators to the field, and we definitely have a shortage in this state of qualified educators entering the profession. And whenever we have a shortage, that is definitely something that impacts in a negative manner the students throughout this state. The testing itself, that second point mentioned, we have to reduce the testing, both in Indiana and nationally for that matter. We've overloaded our students with it. We've overloaded our educators with that. Even in a smaller school like mine, if we could find the funding for it, we could have a job for a counselor that was solely dedicated to testing. That's just crazy in a school with around 400 students in it. That testing also takes away from our teachers teaching what needs to be done for our communities. That can vary across this state, of course. If you reduce that testing load, teachers right now are being forced to teach to state standards. They don't want to be teaching to a test. No teacher wants to teach to a test. If we can reduce that testing load, we can then be able to get more materials that the students need, particularly for career and technical education. Some of the things that are lacking in many schools right now. The funding thing, of course, is huge as well, as far as making sure our schools, our students are supported. When Indiana is just a handful of states that fully fund the educational component of our schools from the state level. And when this was done, the Indiana legislature made a promise to fully fund, fully support our schools. That's not being met. And that's something that needs to be done, and that's one thing I want to push in a big manner, is to try to make sure we are fully funding our public schools and getting the programs in those schools that students need. At one point in time, addressing rural schools, at one point in time we did have a rural schools grant that had additional funding for schools in lower populated areas. Just because the students attending a school in a lower populated part of the state does not mean that student does not deserve those opportunities. So we need to be sure that we are funding and supporting schools all across this state, not just in the heavily populated regions. Second question. Well, with everything going on right now, second question was, what do you propose that Indiana do to help citizens during the next health emergency? And I find it interesting they do say next. That's anticipating there will be something else. We can't sit back and say there won't be. One of the biggest actions we can take is to be sure that we do listen to the professionals in healthcare and on the front lines in any other area. We must make sure we're ready for this. We must take action and trust that expertise from our frontline workers. This is going to be an opportunity where we can evaluate successes and failures, what worked, what didn't, and then take that knowledge to make our next plan. And we do have to learn from this. Obviously, a lot of things have not gone well. Some things have. And where our successes and failures are and what those have been are going to shape this the next plan we do have. One thing I would caution on this is we should not just follow the whim of any politician. Any elected official or candidate that claims he or she has all the solutions to this type of situation is being incredibly naive and frankly deceitful. That's why we do need to make sure we take into account all those frontline workers and what they are doing, what has been done, and then we must reevaluate and have an actual plan in place for the next health emergency. Next question on here, and this is one from somebody I talked to, it looks like a while back. It says, John, a while back, before the current crisis, you and I had talked about the digital divide in rural areas. Now, students and teachers would come to school after hours, use the Wi-Fi there. Can you talk about the current situation, how the current situation is affecting your students and colleagues? What changes need to be made to improve access for rural students? And so on that, obviously, even before this type of situation, broadband Wi-Fi access, it's essential for businesses, for farmers, and also for school and for students. And then particularly in our situation now where we have limited face-to-face contact. School I'm in, we have a high percentage of students that do not have reliable broadband access. We have a lot of teachers that don't. I'm in that situation. My access is through my phone through a hotspot. In fact, this video, when we upload it, it'll probably take several hours to upload this video from that hotspot. So we need to make sure that whether something like this happens again or not, that we are putting broadband access, reliable broadband access to every last mile. And again, we have a lot of that in our more urban, suburban areas. We don't have that in a lot of our rural areas right now. And again, that's a huge area that's being overlooked. So this broadband to every last mile is something that's going to be important because no student, business, farmer, anyone else should be left without this necessary utility.